One Punch Man Season 3 was supposed to be a triumphant return for one of the most beloved modern anime shows, but after 6 years of waiting, what we got was a clear example of how far a series can fall, with an absolute collapse of the audience rating and a backlash across social media. Compared to the explosive first season and even the second season, which wasn't as good but still decent, the drop in overall quality for the third season is impossible to ignore, with many online dubbing the show One Frame Man and calling for it to be remade. Whilst there was the occasional good episode, out of the 12, most of them were simply far below the expected standard. The most immediate issue audiences have raised with One Punch Man Season 3 is the substandard animations. Instead of actual moving animations, a lot of the screen time is taken up by still images, with the camera slowly panning across them, often for several seconds at a time. This often made the show feel like a slideshow presentation, something that you would typically see at work, rather than an anime show that you watch for fun. Static images were also used during the fight scenes, with speed lines to simulate movement, replacing a lot of the fast-paced animations that we had in the 2 previous seasons. Now, this isn't to say that static images can't be used at all. It's a technique that can lower production costs, which can work fine when used sparingly. The problem is, the static images are heavily used throughout the episodes, leading to an extremely boring experience. The second major issue is the slow story pacing and heavy reliance on exposition, particularly through scenes of characters simply standing around and talking. Dialogue and setup are obviously necessary for any story, but the problem here is the lack of balance. Instead of applying the basic storytelling principle of show don't tell, where the story is developed through characters' actions and the world around them, the season repeatedly chooses to explain events rather than letting the audience understand them through action or visual cues. Large sections of episodes are devoted to characters narrating what is happening, what might happen next, or what something means, often with very little actually occurring on screen. Just like the use of static images, this can work when used sparingly, but in this case, it's heavily overused, combining with the low-quality animations to produce many boring episodes that were a struggle to get through. So why exactly did this season turn out the way it did? At its core, the fundamental reason is money. How much funding was put into the project? One Punch Man Season 1 worked because money, time, and creative freedom aligned in a rare way, but it also set an extremely expensive benchmark. Recreating that level of animation requires longer production schedules, highly skilled animators, and a willingness to absorb higher costs that don't guarantee proportional financial returns. From an investment perspective, that's hard to justify when the One Punch Man brand is already proven to sell manga, merchandise, and streaming deals on name recognition alone. Once the financial limits were set, everything downstream was affected. JC Staff, the studio responsible for animating the season, has taken much of the public backlash for the heavy use of static pans and speed lines to simulate movement, and while the studio bears some responsibility for execution, the blame doesn't stop there. Studios don't decide budgets or timelines. Those decisions are made by the production committee at the top, and once they're locked in, every creative choice that follows is shaped by those constraints. Out of the 12 episodes in Season 3, there were a few that were decent. Episodes 5, 8, 9, and the finale stand out as noticeably stronger than the rest, to the point where it almost feels like they received 90% of the season's budget and attention. These were heavy action-based episodes, and because the animation was good and there was none of the boring filler content and standing around talking, the result was a few good episodes. The problem is that these moments are exceptions, not the standard. When the majority of the season is weighed down by static visuals, heavy exposition, and slow pacing, a handful of well-produced episodes simply aren't enough to compensate. Instead of lifting the season as a whole, they end up highlighting just how low the baseline quality is everywhere else, making the contrast even more obvious. In the end, those stronger episodes prove that the show can still work, but they can't undo the damage done by a season that feels rushed and cheap. In the end, One Punch Man Season 3 isn't a failure because the concept stopped working or because the audience suddenly expected too much. It struggles because the conditions that once made the series special no longer exist. Season 1 was lightning in a bottle, a rare moment where budget, time, talent, and creative freedom aligned, and instead of building toward that standard, later seasons were produced under safer, more conservative constraints. The result is a season defined by inconsistency, a few few genuinely strong episodes, surrounded by long stretches of low-effort animation, slow pacing, and heavy exposition that dilute the overall experience. JC Staff may be the most visible target of criticism, but the real responsibility lies higher up, with production decisions that prioritize cost control and predictability over ambition. Season 3 proves that One Punch Man can still work, but it also makes one thing clear: without meaningful investment and creative risk, the series will continue to fall short.